School of Medicine, Dr. Erin Cassidy-Eagle. Now, she is a clinical professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences. Dr. Cassidy-Eagle specializes in treatments of mental health disorders in adults and older adults. She has practiced as a clinical psychologist for more than 20 years and has a special interest in sleep, cognition, and mental health of older adults. Now, per our tradition, here's some fun facts about sleep that you might not know. Did you know that sleep struggles are not just a human problem? Whoa. What about, did you know that tigers and infants sleep at the same amount of time? And what about this last one? Elephants sleep less than any other animal. Whoa. As a reminder, please put any questions for Dr. Erin in the chat during the program, and she will answer them during our Q&A portion of our program. Welcome back, Dr. Erin. The Zoom
Thank you.
floor is yours.
Thank you. Gosh, and thanks. So nice to see so many people log in the morning, especially a couple days after daylight savings time, because I don't think we could have timed it better, but we're all probably feeling the pain of that still. Takes some time to recover. So anyway, sleep is, as everyone knows, my favorite thing to talk about. And today I'm just going to sort of summarize why it's important, what it sort of does for our health, and then talk about how do we get ourselves really sleepy, what are good sleep behaviors, also talk about circadian rhythms, and then kind of end with some tools, supplements, ways. I love seeing the stuff in the chat. It looks like a lot of people are using a lot of the things I'm going to talk about. And really, it's just figuring out something that works for you. So hopefully you'll at least pick up maybe one little thing you want to try today. But I also look forward to the Q&A too, to see if there's other things you guys would like to hear about. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, let me know. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Okay, and just stop me if I freeze too. All right. All right, so like this poor pup, even the animals, right? Even our animals struggle with daylight savings time because they want to eat eat at the wrong time. But I think there's a lot of research now. You know, sleep has become a popular thing to study, but the benefit is we understand a lot more about it. So it even relates to mortality. So there's certain things that put us at more risk when we look at someone's sleep. So duration, so how long you sleep. And some might say, hey, gosh, I'm just not getting enough sleep. I will say there's this sweet spot they found in the study, several studies. 7 to 8 hours is a really good place to be. But the sort of danger zone is if you only sleep 4 to 5 hours or you sleep 9 or more hours. So I think it's always helpful to tell people that, because sometimes they feel like, gosh, you know, if you're between 6 and 9 hours, you're normal. That's a good range. 6 isn't terrible. I think, you know, we get in our head, it has to be 8. It has to be 8. No, 6 is good. If it's short, you know, some people say, and maybe this is not the best joke ever, but people say, I'll sleep when I die. I'm just going to keep working. Well, you know, unfortunately, we know that'll happen sooner if you're not sleeping. So we want to get good sleep. But if you're only sleeping 4 or 5 hours, then I want you to find some tools that help you sleep more, because it's important to get into that 6 to 9 hour range. But we also know that if folks are sleeping 9 or more hours, that we want to look at that too. Now, some people are exceptions. They've always slept, you know, 9, 10 hours. But if this is new for you and you're sleeping 9 or 10 hours, we want to look at it. Sometimes it's a sign of something else going on in your body. You know, we want to make sure nothing else is going on. Another thing to look at is chronotype. I will say the morning birds, they tend to health-wise do a little bit better than the sort of night owls. One of the things I do wonder about is that the world is kind of designed for the morning larks, you know, it's starting your day out early. So is the risk of being a night owl because we're always trying to force you into the morning in terms of work or social events? But so that's something to consider, because you're kind of born one or the other, and you're always trying to just make it work for your life. Another factor we look at is what we call regularity. So our body, our rhythms really like it if we do the same thing at the same time every day. I know it sounds kind of boring, but if you have a schedule, you eat around the same time, you exercise around the same time, you get in bed, get out of bed. Our body likes that. That likes that stability. Now, listen, life happens, so sometimes we go off, but just thinking about kind of having a regular habits and regular patterns actually does support some good health. We also know that sleep, let's say you're sleep deprived, that actually messes up our hormones related to obesity. It makes their leptin and ghrelin are the names of the hormones, but it makes our body sends us messages. Hey, you're hungry when we're not. Or it says it won't detect that we're full. So it actually does increase obesity rates if you're sleep deprived all the time. Cardiovascular, we know it relates to those symptoms. And then immune functioning, there's been a lot more attention on that, especially since COVID. We're certainly talking about it a lot more. One of the studies is one of my favorites, because it's just such a good example of this, is if you have trouble sleeping the week before you get a flu shot, so you're slightly sleep deprived when you get that flu shot, you develop 50% fewer antibodies from that shot. So our body just doesn't take up that vaccine and sort of, incorporate and develop antibodies against the flu as well when we're sleep deprived. So it's a good example of how important sleep is. And then I always like to say, gosh, our mental health. We all know when we're sleep deprived, maybe we feel a little more irritable, but I think it can go further than that. And if we struggle emotionally with any depression, anxiety, and let's face it, all of us have had probably something on the continuum there, that when you have sleep problems, it exacerbates that. It makes it harder. It's bidirectional. So poor sleep puts you at risk of more sort of emotional distress. But also, if you're emotionally distressed, it also puts you at risk of having poor sleep. It's kind of a vicious cycle. So if we want to get in there and try to stop that cycle and turn things more positive. I think we also think a lot about our brain health, and those same duration, regularity, those same things apply with our cognition. We know that if someone's only sleeping 4 hours a night, which I'll tell you, there are very few people that only get 4 hours, or they're sleeping over 9 hours, we know that puts you at greater risk of developing cognitive impairment. So getting regular sleep, and somewhere between 6 and 9 hours is really important. Napping, there's some recent studies on napping, and what we know, the connection of napping to cognition is that you don't. So when we look at how much you sleep every day, we look across a 24-hour period. So some people might only sleep, 5 hours at night, but they take a 2-hour nap. So then overall they get enough sleep. But I think let's say most of us would like to get that sleep at night. And I think that's preferred. I think napping isn't bad, but what we've found is that if you take an extended nap, not only do you wake up, so when I say extended, I mean 45 minutes and up. So if you go to sleep for an hour during the day, one, you're probably going to wake up not feeling really great. Often the longer you sleep, people will report that when they wake up, they feel like, oh gosh, I'm still really tired. I need more sleep, or maybe I'm getting sick, and it's really just that if you sleep longer, you're more likely to wake up in a deeper stage of sleep, and that just doesn't feel that good. So even though naps are great, we don't want to cut them off. If you can set a timer, 30, 45 minutes, lie down, consider it a rest. I think people then report when it's shorter like that. You feel more refreshed, gives you a little more energy. You don't feel that sort of sleep inertia, that grogginess when you wake up. So I'm pro nap because I love them myself. So shorter is better. And if you think about 7 to 9 hours after you wake up in the morning is a great time for a nap. And we're just getting more and more evidence that it does affect our brain health. Okay, so what changes with age with our sleep? Well, we know that sleep is slightly shorter. So I gotta say, I don't like it when I hear people say, oh, we need less sleep as we get older. Um, I think I like to always give a little more detail with that. So let's say when you were 40, you slept 7.5 hours. When you're 70, maybe you sleep 7 hours. So it's not a ton less, maybe 30, 40 minutes, but tends to be a little bit shorter than when you were younger. You tend to wake up more. And part of that is because you have less deep sleep. So we do lose about 80 to 90% of our deep sleep between age 20 and 70. So maybe when you were 20, you got about 80 to 90 minutes of deep sleep a night. When you're 70, it's about 25 minutes. Deep sleep is really important though. It does connect to memory and learning. So we want to that's why having good quality sleep to make sure we get all the deep sleep we can, and just refreshing sleep, not broken up with a lot of awakenings, is worth the effort. Other things disrupt our sleep too as we get older: pain, light in the room. I will say sleeping medications, although they're good temporarily, things like Ambien, I will say those medications, there's no, as they call it, deep sleep brainwave activity. So although they do put us to sleep, we don't get deep sleep. So it's better to try to not use those and use some of the other things we're going to talk about today and see if those can help. Now, short term, sometimes those medications can be a huge help, but just long term, it's better to not be on them. I also like to say that sometimes when we feel like our sleep's disrupted, we stay in bed longer. This is one of the themes. So maybe you've had a bad night's sleep, so you say, oh, I'm gonna sleep in a couple hours. One, you're kind of giving yourself jet lag. So if you usually get up at 7 and you get up at 10, that does throw off how you feel, but it also might extend the time in bed, but it doesn't always give us more sleep. I'd rather somebody be in bed for 7 hours and get 6 hours of sleep than be in bed for 11 hours and get 8 hours of sleep, just because, lying in bed longer doesn't always give you the sort of refreshing rest that we all need. Okay, so what is insomnia? I like to talk about, when do you know your sleep is a problem? Like, when would someone diagnose you as being an insomniac? I think it's helpful to know what's normal. So normal is, 6 to 9 hours a night, taking about 15 to 20 minutes to fall asleep. I think usually everybody has 1 to 2 nights a week where their sleep isn't great. That doesn't mean it's a real problem. I think that's kind of normal life. It's not going to be great every night. But if you're looking at 3 or 4 nights a week where you really have trouble sleeping and you wake up not feeling well, that's when it's worth talking to somebody about it to see if there's something you can change. What are other signs? If someone tells you you're snoring, or you wake up and your mouth's open and it's all dry, so you've been snoring. If you're falling asleep during the day, not intentionally, so maybe you're watching TV or you're a passenger in a car and you're just so sleepy, that's something to watch out for. And also for those that need more sleep than previously, that can be a sign of something too. So those are times to sort of reach out for help and see what's going on. Another thing I'll mention when I say 15 to 20 minutes to fall asleep, sometimes people come and they say, oh no, I'm great, I fall asleep in 30 seconds. I will say sometimes that's a red flag for us at work, because if you hit the pillow and instantly fall asleep, that actually is a really strong sign that, one, you're probably really sleep deprived or exhausted. And if that happens occasionally, that's one thing. But if it happens every night, then we also start to suspect that you might have sleep apnea. And that also makes you sleep deprived. But then it's worth having an overnight sleep study just to sort of check that out, because CPAP, there's things you can do for that. So if you fall asleep the second your head hits a pillow, like, explore what's going on there. Okay, healthy behaviors for sleep. Exercise, certainly staying active, is good for just about everything: our brains, our heart, our sleep. Light exposure. Now, light exposure, light is such a big thing. We're going to talk about that even more with the circadian rhythms. But some people, when some of their routine, in terms of getting ready and getting into bed, is looking at their phone, we can't help it, right? Or a tablet. I say the key thing is how close is that light to your eyes? If it's bright, like those smartphones are so bright now, if that is something you're staring at right before bed, it's strong enough that it actually suppresses melatonin and it makes it harder to fall asleep. Plus, it's kind of arousing depending on what you're looking at. So I say if you have a tablet or, books are great. If you use a tablet, switch that light dark setting. And TV, actually, I like TV the best because it's farther away from your eyes. I don't like it as much when you're sleeping because the light from the TV and the noise can kind of keep you in lighter sleep. But some people who really need TV to fall asleep, I always say, just set a timer, get a timer hooked up to your TV, so that you can fall asleep and not have the light. But there's something familiar sometimes for folks. They're used to watching a news show or whatever it is when they go to bed. And I think, as much as I prefer it not to be a screen, the TV would probably be the best choice. Do not go to bed hungry. You'd be surprised. You can actually wake up because you're hungry. And so if you find that you're one of those folks that wakes up and your stomach's growling, and maybe you have an early dinner and went to bed later, having a little snack, especially maybe a little protein and a little carb right before you go to bed isn't a bad idea. You don't want a full stomach, but maybe a snack actually can help you sleep better. So some people do notice they wake up and they're hungry. Avoid excess liquids. We were talking about that before we launched this morning. Anybody over 50, I think we want to be conscious of, how much we're drinking at night and how close to bedtime it is, because then it can just wake you up a whole lot to use the restroom. Caffeine, I think we get more sensitive to caffeine over time. Some people can still drink a cup of coffee and go to bed, but most of us can't. So cutting that off earlier in the afternoon. Nightcaps, I always like to mention nightcaps because it's kind of a myth, hey, a nightcap, right? Have a shot of something or a nightcap. But here's what we know is that when you metabolize the alcohol, it actually is activating. So it might put you to sleep, but it's probably going to wake you up a few hours later. So it doesn't mean no alcohol, but it means, hey, enjoy that maybe 5 hours, 4 hours before you go to bed. It's not a tool for falling asleep because, it'll knock you out, but it's going to wake you up later as your body processes it. So that's a myth I always like to mention. And then lastly, make sure that your bedroom is cool at night. I think sometimes, especially in the winter, we want to warm up. Some people say, hey, I take a warm bath before bed. We actually know that the ideal temperature when you fall asleep is like 67, which I know sounds very chilly, but the reason for this is as our core body temperature, when we're falling asleep, our core body temperature is actually dropping. So that may be why we're feeling cool, but that actually helps us fall asleep. And then you can see on this very basic graph that at some point in the middle of the night, it hits its lowest point, and then it starts to go up. And that's why you might notice when you wake up in the morning, you feel warmer, right? Because your core body temperature is rising, and that is actually a lot of what wakes us up in the morning. So thinking about keeping things cool and dark when you go to sleep, and just knowing that, as you wake up, your body temperature is going to be rising. Core body temperature is also interesting to look at over a 24-hour period. We notice biologically for most of us that about 1, 2 in the afternoon, we have a slight dip in our core body temperature. And that's what we call kind of people often think it's because you ate lunch. And so your stomach's full. And so you feel a little tired. It actually doesn't have to do with the food at all. Our bodies all have this point in the afternoon, mid-afternoon, where our core body temperature drops and we feel like a little tired. I think that's either a great time to lie down and take a half an hour rest. It's a great time for a snack. But I think it's a great time to remind yourself, hey, you know what? This is going to pass. In about 30, 40 minutes, I'm going to feel like I did an hour ago. So just know that's a normal feeling mid-afternoon. Okay, so healthy behaviors, we've kind of covered a lot of these already. And you probably have heard them through different media sources, but it is true. If someone said to me, if I only do one thing, what do you want me to do? I would say, get up at the same time every day. Figure out a time that works 7 days a week and get up as close to that as possible. Now, we have life schedules, right? So sometimes it's nice to stay in bed, if you've had a busy week. And if you stay in bed an hour, that's not going to be the end of the world. But I think trying to keep as regular a schedule as possible will actually make you feel, they call it social jet lag. If you feel better when it's consistent. Just wait till you're sleepy to get into bed. We talked about naps versus rest. Sometimes, and I think if you're dealing with pain or some medical condition, or you're just feeling tired, I think it's okay. Sometimes people have a hard time giving themselves permission to rest. I don't know why, for me, if I say, hey, I'm going to go relax, I feel like it's a luxury and I'm treating myself. But I like saying, hey, I'm going to go take a rest. And this may be my own quirk, but in my head, when I say I'm going to take a rest, it feels like a reward. It feels like, hey, I've been working hard and I need a rest. And that makes it seem easier for me to do it than if I just say, I'm going to go take a nap. But know that naps or rest, they're both helpful for your body and taking care of yourself. So lying down in the afternoon isn't a bad thing. I think, we say, hey, if you're up all night, don't go to sleep during the day, but sometimes just having a half an hour, maybe you close your eyes, maybe you don't even fall asleep, but you might find it kind of gives you that second wind, kind of helps you feel refreshed. So it's worth considering doing that. And if you do it in your bed if you can, because we want your bed to be that place of rest and peace. Set an alarm if you're someone who might fall asleep, just to kind of keep it shorter. But you might, and do it about the same time every day is my suggestion. Creating a buffer zone. What I mean by that is sometimes we're going during the day. Make sure that period before you get into bed is you're winding down. You're giving yourself some time off screens. Maybe you're doing something kind to yourself, taking care of yourself, but try to sort of create that space to get into that mode where you can just go to sleep and be at peace. It's like someone said to me in a group last week, I now consider the doorway into my bedroom. When I walk through that, it's a place of peace. If I'm going to worry or be anxious about something, I have to come back out of that door, because once I go through that doorway, it's a place of peace. And I loved the image of having it be that space. One thing that folks do have trouble with, it's often advice we give, but it's hard to do, is if you're awake for 2 hours in the middle of the night, it is better to get out of bed and do something boring. It could be watching TV. It could be reading a magazine. Don't get up and be productive. Don't get up and do the dishes. Don't get up and read a really good book, because then you won't want to put it down. Get up and do something that kind of will get you back to a sleepy state. Because what we want is we want that bed to be a place of sleep. And the more time you spend in bed awake, looking at the clock, doing math, when do I have to get up? I'm stressed. I need to fall asleep. The more you do that in bed, then you start to kind of associate feeling like that in your bed. And we just don't want it to be a space for that. So that's why we recommend that. And then finally, thinking about being in bed for the amount of time you're actually sleeping. Don't do your work on your laptop or respond to emails in bed. Don't, eat your meals in your bed. That's why we want to keep the bed for sleep and try to do those things somewhere else. Now, I do say sometimes when people are recovering from surgery or have other things going on, we have to kind of adapt how we approach this, but just sort of as general advice. Circadian rhythms. So this is another big piece. What is the biggest fueler of circadian rhythms is light. I will say we have rhythms for everything in our body. Our heart rate, when we're sleepy, or release of different hormones in our body, whether it be, cortisol, whether it be melatonin. And so light suppresses melatonin. So if you're someone, for example, that feels groggy in the morning, you wake up and it's like, oh, I need to go back to sleep. That's a perfect time to sit by a window, sit outside, go for a walk. Use a light box. The light box, wow, you can get those for so they're a lot less expensive. You can get them on Amazon. Search something like Go Light Blue. Gosh, they're the size of a cell phone now. You could just use 20 minutes of indirect light. Just as a guide, if you do use a light box, just some quick sort of advice about it. Think of it as put it about an arm's length away, indirect. So like if you see my arm, kind of like put it off to the side, and you could be watching TV, you could be reading the paper, you could be eating breakfast. So don't look at the light. It's indirect into your eyes. Try for just 20 minutes in the morning if you're someone who wakes up groggy. So kind of offset, indirect, so you don't look in it, but it's shining at you, obviously no sunglasses. And vice versa. If you are somebody who's sleepy in the evening, like you want to get in bed at 6 o'clock, then you're a great target for someone who should have light in the evening. Light pushes sleep away, if you think about it that way. So if you do light at 6 o'clock, you're pushing sleep later. If you do light in the morning, you're increasing your alertness and pushing sleep behind you. So light is something that can increase alertness. And, we have these clocks, and they're in our hypothalamus that register the light and also regulate other things in our body. So if you're having trouble, right, kind of you can't break your circadian rhythms. You just kind of have to figure out where your natural place is. So, you're sleeping at regular times, meals, your activity, even when you socialize, that if those are all in a rhythm, your body and your sleep are going to be feeling a lot better. Okay. Kind of shifting from rhythms into what are tools that people use. I saw the chat. A lot of you guys are already trying a lot of these things. I think, what do we have research on? So I always like to re-look at the literature and see, what are people studying? We do have some evidence that things like chamomile tea, valerian root, those kinds of things do increase our sleepiness. So if you are trying to get to sleep a little bit easier, those are really easy things to try, and don't interact with most prescription medications. Of course, just like the disclaimer with any of these, it's always worth it if you're on different prescriptions to check with your doctor and just make sure that these are safe for you. But I think these are things a lot of people can, and they're over the counter, so you can try them on your own. Melatonin is a real common one. And I think what I like to say is buy a decent brand. It's, maybe one that's had third-party testing, or has some certifications. Why I say that is there was a Canadian study a couple years ago that looked at 31 different brands of melatonin. And they studied how much melatonin is in this actual pill. And 70% of the pills they studied did not have the amount that they said they had. They either had as much as 10% off. Some of them were 480% off. So they either had a lot more or a lot less. And it's frustrating to me because people do rely on it, but because they're not regulated, that's why the third-party testing and having just some, we're going to spend money on it, that, gosh, we should. Sometimes I wish it was regulated, not so it costs more, but just so you actually get what you're paying for. I also like to tell people it's not really a hypnotic. So if you do take melatonin, it's not something you take right when you're getting into bed. It doesn't work that quickly. It builds on your own natural melatonin. It's good to take maybe an hour before bed. So it really helps with sort of increasing sleepiness. It doesn't just put you right to sleep. And sometimes I had someone ask me this yesterday. Sometimes people worry, hey, but if I take melatonin a lot, I'm going to screw up my own natural melatonin. Good news is you're not. So you're going to still produce the amount of melatonin you produce. I will say as we get older, we tend to release melatonin earlier in the evening. That's why people tend to be sleepier earlier. Not true for everybody. We still always get some night owls, but just know that you're not going to screw up your own melatonin, but if it helps you get to sleep at a time that works better for you, makes you feel good. And more isn't more. So 3 to 5 milligrams is a real common dose. Taking 20 isn't going to help that much more. It's kind of like just take the regular dose, and more isn't more, but a lot of people do find it helps them fall asleep. Magnesium, and I'll talk some more about magnesium too in a second, but we know that magnesium is, it's a relaxant. It relaxes our nervous system. So folks with restless leg might have tried it. We know there's lots of food we can find it in. And so sometimes folks take that. If you want to take it every day, I like people to talk to their doctor. 300 to 420 milligrams is a common daily dose. But if you start wanting it as part of your daily routine, I think it's good to check that out with your physician. If it's just on occasion, it's less of an issue, but it can build up in your body. So you just want to make sure you're communicating that you are taking it. And then CBD, a lot of people take gummies or report that helps with their sleep. I will say, as it became legal in California, it's more and more of a thing. I'd say more than half of the people I see at work probably have tried either gummies or some edible or some form of it for sleep, anxiety, and pain. Those are kind of the three common things. Here's the tough part is that there's not a lot of studies on it, not a lot of studies on people over 50. So the trouble is we don't really know how it interacts with other medications. We don't know who it works best for. We don't know what the effects will be long term. And so it's hard to give advice because when we studied it, like in college students or younger folks, they will report that their sleep is better. It helps their sleep. But when we measure their sleep is actually shorter and actually they're sleeping less. So they feel like it's better, but when we look at the numbers, it doesn't appear as though it's actually improving their sleep. So I think for everybody, it's a balance to kind of figure out what are you treating? Are you treating sort of the arousal and the anxiety? But I don't know that we have evidence yet that it's a great thing for sleep. So hopefully we'll get more research because I think what people really need is to be able to see somebody and get some advice on where should I get it? What should I try? We're not real good about helping people figure it out. So hopefully as research comes out, we'll get better at that. Okay. I'm going to show a little video. I have to say, my good friend Atisha Jones at AARP, she's the one that led me to this current trend, this viral trend of a sleepy girl mocktail. I'm going to show you this short video, and you don't have to look far to find a million of them online. I'll be honest, I'm boring, and I hadn't even seen any of them, but I'm going to play this one for you, and then let's talk about whether it's true or not, whether there's evidence.
The other night, I decided to try the Sleepy Girl mocktail that I've been seeing everyone and their mother make on this app. And let me just tell you something. I couldn't even finish it. That's how exhausted I was, okay? So if you're like me and you're tired of popping those bennies, you know what I'm talking about. And then come here, girl. Let me show you how to make this. The first thing you need is some tart juice. Now, I don't know the exact measurements on how much each measurement should be, so I just pour. Go ahead and take your magnesium capsule, or you can use a powder, but they say if you're going to use the magnesium, it's better to use the magnesium glossophyte. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Like, pour the whole thing in there. Go ahead and blend it. As you can see, it does not dissolve. Then take a poppy. I like to use the raspberry rose one. This one is so good mixed with the tart juice. This is delicious. It is so good, and it's going to knock you out cold. Like, I'm not kidding. Definitely try this if you have a hard time sleeping, because this is the best thing TikTok has ever taught me.
Okay, so there's a million of these out there, and I found them totally entertaining. And some people use these big goblets and fancy ice, and so I had a few thoughts. So I knew there was some evidence about tart cherry juice in particular. I do some work with cancer patients, and their sleep is really disrupted. And so there are some nutritional things that we do recommend to help people sleep when they're going through some different medical crises. And tart cherry juice is one of the things we recommend. So I was amused that it's become so popular. I think it is good to measure. So here's a few caveats is one, I think any of us over 50 drinking, a huge goblet of fluid right when we go to bed is probably not the most helpful thing. But when I looked through all the studies, and now there's about a dozen that have good evidence, they say, gosh, you can do a half a cup to a cup of tart cherry juice. A lot of the studies had folks drink it in the morning and about 1 to 2 hours before they went to bed. And there actually is good evidence that it did help people fall asleep. Now, why? Because it actually increases melatonin and tryptophan in your body. Kind of think about the Thanksgiving turkey. It increases those amino acids and hormones in our body that do help us fall asleep. So if you want to go nutritionally, it's not a bad thing to try. I would say a few cautions. Don't drink a ton of liquid. I don't think that's a great idea. But if you're also going to try it, hold off on the melatonin. You don't want to double down on it. It wouldn't be a terrible thing, but I think really it's they're both giving you the same. So it's, I'm not going to lie. This one I found at Trader Joe's. So Trader Joe's, grocery stores, you can just find it in the juice aisle. Just you can get organic or not, but 100% tart cherry juice. Now, in these videos, they love to add a magnesium to it. Now, magnesium, as I just said, it does help you relax, can promote sleep. If you do take magnesium, the glycinate or the citrate are the ones to pick. There is something called magnesium oxide. That's a laxative, so don't pick that one. If you need help with constipation, then that's a great one to take in the morning. But the other, you want the glycinate or the citrate. And you can take it 30 minutes before bed. It does calm your nervous system. Now, in these videos, they combine it. I was joking with someone before the call that honestly, I'd rather just take the 2 pills and then drink the tart cherry juice. I don't know that I would be excited about opening up supplements and mixing them into a drink. I don't know that they really would taste that good, but I think if that seems more exciting, that it seems like a safe thing to try. If this trend appeals to you. I will also say, let's say you don't want to take another supplement. Magnesium is in a lot of foods, leafy greens, nuts, dairy, avocado. So let's say you want to increase your magnesium. Maybe this is where your snack before bed could be some nuts and a little yogurt. That would be a great way to get some magnesium, do it nutritionally, and see, also get that little snack before bed. So I think even though this is a fun thing to think about, there's other ways you can try to get that same fix. So there is actual real evidence for this trend, but I think you can kind of break it apart and make it work for you in lots of different ways. Let's see. There we go. The magic wand. I think the other thing to think about with all these supplements, gosh, if you have looked for sleep aids in a CVS or Walgreens, you know what I'm talking about. It is big business. There are a ton of them. And they all might contain something that can help you sleep. But I think I just want to caution folks that, for example, Benadryl, sometimes people take Benadryl antihistamines to sleep. And as we get older, we know that has the fancy term for it is anticholinergic effects. So it can actually affect your thinking and memory. So if you're trying some of these aids, the thing I don't like about them is they often combine a million different things. So look at the things in them and make sure that they're safe, but also that as you get older, the Benadryl, those kinds of sort of antihistamine category of drugs can put you in increased risk of falls. And if you sort of feel fuzzy in your thinking, they're not great for sleep aids. Some of the other things are better to try. And also know that sometimes it's stress or anxiety that might be keeping you up. And so let's figure out what's keeping you up. Sometimes that magic wand, people just want to take something, isn't always the way to go. Try if you can to figure out what's causing your problems and try to address that. Otherwise, as soon as you stop taking something, you'll still have the problem. So I like to kind of figure out what's beneath all this. And that kind of relates to the last part of what I wanted to talk about, which is, sorry, I left the picture up here, is a lot of us, we're thinking about the day, we're worrying about things, right? Our mind's going, and something about hitting that pillow and it's quiet, for some reason our brains say, hey, now you're ready to solve all the problems in your life. And it's just something we as humans do to ourselves. And so one, if you can distract yourself with your bedtime routine, kind of get yourself in the relaxed state, that's good. But other things people use, weighted blankets. So really good for anxiety. Anxiety, insomnia, and autism are the #1 thing studied for weighted blankets. So that can kind of calm your system down. Masks, like if you have a street light or a neighbor's light that you can't control, whether it's blackout curtains or masks, or if you have a hospital stay or you're traveling and you're not sure what could be interfering in your sleep. Masks, if you're comfortable, are good. Background noise. Some people just turn on a fan. Some people have a special machine. I really, you think of, I have one patient I see, he has only one Alexa. It's in his bedroom. He has a favorite sort of guided relaxation imagery sort of script. And so if he wakes up in the middle of the night, he doesn't get out of bed. He doesn't turn on any lights. He just says, hey, Alexa, play my favorite guided relaxation. And, it runs for 40 minutes and he knows that'll help distract him and get him back to bed. Maybe it's the Calm app. I love the Calm app, the soundscapes. I'm a big fan of rain, any water sounds really. But there are things like sleep stories and other guided relaxation things in that app and a lot of other apps. Recently, I was working with someone, they didn't want to, you can get like a week free trial of Calm. Maybe you don't want to pay for an app. The free ones, Insight Timer, I had kind of forgotten about it. The name of it is Insight Timer. That one is a free one, and it has sounds, it has sleep stories, it has relaxation. Not as much of a library, but it still has quite a bit. And I was able to work with someone and find one that she really liked, and she turns it on in the middle of the night if she wakes up, and it's 90 minutes long. So she says, I know I'll fall back asleep during that time. Any of the VA created apps, so any of the apps that end in the word coach, insomnia coach, mindfulness coach, those are also free and really great apps, and they're free because the federal government paid to create them, so they have to be free for everyone. So those are worth trying if you have trouble sleeping. And then the last thing I just wanted to just talk about is some people like to journal. And there's one tool here. It's called Constructive Worry. I make a sheet like this. I draw a line down the middle, concerns on one side, solutions on the other. Don't do this at bedtime. Do it maybe at 2 p.m. or 6 p.m. Try to keep it away from bedtime. But if there are things you're worried about, problems you're trying to solve, write them down on here. And so you write the list down, and then I also included the instructions, and I'm happy to send this in a separate version that AARP can send out. But basically, if you decide the next step, the next thing you're going to do, hey, I need to ask this friend for a referral for a contractor, or I need to call and get something scheduled. You write that down as your next step. Maybe there's nothing you can do about it and you just need to learn how to accept it. Maybe you write that down. Maybe you decide, you know what, this isn't that big of an issue. I can deal with this down the line. You write that down. But anything that those kinds of things that pop into your mind at bedtime, write them down, write the next step, fold that paper up, set it on your bedstand. So then in the middle of the night or you're falling asleep and you start that list, the to-do list, the stuff you have to do. Then you can say to yourself, hey, no, I already handled that. I wrote it down. I have a plan for tomorrow. There is nothing more that I can do right now that's going to solve that problem. And I wrote things down when my brain was at optimal functioning. Right now I'm groggy, I'm sleepy. It's not the best time to solve problems. I have a plan. I'll do it tomorrow. So I liked it's a different form of journaling, but put those worries earlier in the day. And then finally, just as a summary of kind of what I've talked about, strong sleep drive, get yourself sleepy going into bed. For you and your circadian rhythm, go to bed at the best time for you and try to have yourself be as calm as possible. All those things help you get good sleep. And just when it comes to you could pick one tiny little thing and change it, and you might notice it has an impact. And so sometimes I say, pick one little thing and do it every day for 2 weeks. Make it something that's easy for you to do. Maybe you don't want to get out of bed. Maybe you just want to try the tart cherry juice. Try something for 2 weeks. And you know what? Our bodies are pretty resilient. And these small changes can still make a difference. So do something that fits into your life, is a good match for you, and hopefully you see an improvement in your sleep. And that is it. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I appreciate you guys listening to me go through all those slides.
Wow, that was really interesting. Thank you so much for the information that you shared. And,
absolutely,
we appreciate your helping us to understand how good sleep leads to good health. Now, if you have any other questions, remember to put them into the chat so that Dr. Erin could actually answer a couple of them. So let's go over the chat. Jacqueline, what do you see in there, Erin?
Well, one person wanted to know, does getting up and going to the bathroom really impact your sleep? If you get up and down
Oh,
often,
you know
what is
what?
the impact of that?
Yeah, most of us. So, I always say have a dim light in your bathroom so it's not like a real bright light.
Yep.
I'd say honestly, most of us get up to go to the bathroom at some point. If you can get up, go to the bathroom, not expose yourself to too much light, get back in bed, and you fall to sleep pretty quickly, it's not a problem at all. Because our natural sleep cycle, there's little moments where we do wake up, and that's when we tend to notice we need to pee and do it. If you fall right back to sleep, it's not a problem. If you find every time you do it, you get back in bed and you're like, now I'm totally awake, then we want to work on that. But yeah, in general, no, it's not a big deal.
Another question is, I have a particular med I have to take every 6 hours, and waking for the morning dose always makes it hard to get a full night's sleep. Any suggestions?
Oh gosh, that
That's a
is tough.
that's a
And
that's a good one.
yeah, I mean, I'd say, and you're probably already doing this, make it as easy as possible. Have it right by your bed, have a little bit of water, and maybe a calming sound for your alarm. And yeah, gosh, it's kind of hard to totally make that better, but anything you can do that will keep you from having to get up and get cold or have to go get water, or open a bottle, anything you can do to make it easier, the better. But yeah, I mean, I think managing medical conditions and pain and that kind of stuff, gosh, this is the tough stuff. It's just making it as easy for you as you can.
Yeah, yeah. Another question is, what's your opinion regarding giving melatonin to children under 2 years of age?
Well, that is a good question. Um, it would be more of a personal opinion because I got to tell you, as my love is, I have kids, so I love kids, but I'm not a pediatrics person. So I would ask their pediatrician. I will say they will do sleep studies on really young children because, sometimes if I don't like to give anything that I could avoid giving for a youngster. Um, so I like to sort of, if you think there's something going on or they're really having trouble sleeping, I'd want to figure out more what's going on before I gave them melatonin. So I would just suggest, and they do that, they let the parent sleep with the kid and check it out because sometimes you get kids, there's a real connection to mouth breathers. And I was shocked when I had my kids, one of the doctors in the NICU said to me, oh, that one's a mouth breather, that one's a nose breather. They know from the day you're born which one you are. If you're a mouth breather, that unfortunately it's not good. And I have colleagues in sleep medicine that will say, hey, those are the kids you should consider a TNA, a tonsil and adenoid removal. Because there are connections we know now with mouth breathing to even things like ADHD. So it's worth kind of getting at what's going on. If you notice your child is having trouble sleeping, try to figure out what's going on because there are things they can do.
Right,
Absolutely.
thanks.
Yeah.
One other question. Allergists said not to take Benadryl for anything years ago. What about, I never say this right, ashwagandha?
Ooh, good question. And I'm just going to be honest. I don't know. I don't know. I would have to ask a colleague on that one. But yeah, I think that's what allergies is a tough one, and figuring out something that has the least impact on brain functioning is the way to go. So I do like the idea of supplements and natural things, but I don't know the research on that one. So I'm happy to try to look at it, but I don't know.
Let's do this one more question because they're
Yeah,
so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I was told that doing 3 big yawns before going to bed is helpful. Is there any truth in that?
I
Any
think
science in that?
I mean, science, okay, I haven't looked at the research, but let's face it, when you see someone yawning, it makes you kind of yawn. I think there's some relaxation mechanism. It's kind of like if you want to do a 4-7-8 breath, like a deep breathing, you can just Google 4-7-8 breath. I think yawning is a similar thing. I think it's something about it relaxes your system, right? It suppresses your nervous system a little bit. So if that helps, gosh, it certainly doesn't hurt. So do it.
Thank you so much. Back to you, Joyce.
Well, I know there's so many questions. I do apologize to everyone. I know you want to get those questions answered, but that's okay. We're going to try to get her come back in once more, okay? So before we close out, we would like to take a quick pulse about what you've learned. So please put in the chat what questions were answered for you today. Come on, I know you learned a lot. So put them in the chat. And Jacqueline, what are some of the folks writing?
Oops, you're on mute.
What, you couldn't hear me?
No, you're on mute. Go ahead.
Sleepy time mocktail, gonna give it a try. Learned that today. A lot of definitely interesting and helpful. So people are just, I think they are leaving with a lot of tips that will help them. Let's see what else. If we have one more actual tip, the benefit of naps, how to use tart cherry juice.
Wow, those are really good.
And if you do just one thing, go to bed, get up, sorry, at the same time every day as much as possible.
Wow, thank you so much. People did learn a lot. I can see
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're interested in rewatching this program or our previous programs, you can visit our Tea and Coffee Tuesday webpage, and the link is right there in the chat. Join us for our first 2024 our quarterly Piggyback Essentials on Thursday, March the 21st at 9 a.m.